So in today's quick video, we're going to go over correctly sizing your Bondix server for the number of tunnels that you have. There are a few caveats involved in this. So firstly, there are 4 types of bonding licenses. There's an IoT license, which gives you 20 meg. There's a standard license, which gives you 100 meg. There's an enterprise license, which allows you a 200 meg bandwidth. And there's an ultimate license, which gives you a 500 meg bandwidth. We always recommend that if you're going to be buying different licenses, or you're going to be buying multiples of different licenses, that you should look to set up individual servers for those specific licenses. So you have a dedicated IoT server, a dedicated standard, a dedicated enterprise, and so on. That makes calculating and scaling your server a lot more simpler. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you obviously need to make sure that you've got enough internet capacity on those servers. So ideally you want a minimum of a 1 gigabit link that has non-contended and is straight out onto the internet. All of our servers, when we spec our servers, we all have a standard 5 gigabit internet connection on all of ours. So you've got to look at that and make sure that you've got enough internet capacity for the number of tunnels that you're expecting to bond at the speed that you're expected to bond them at. So in the examples that we're going to go through shortly, we're just looking at the IoT license, which is a 20 meg license, and we'll show you how that scales over from 1 tunnel all the way up to 100. If we have a look at our server sizing chart as we see at the moment, so we can see we're looking at an IoT license at 20 meg per tunnel on a server with a 1 gigabit internet link. So that's what we're looking at. So if we look at the number of tunnels, if we start with a single tunnel, which is where most people would normally be, the CPU speed would have to be 1 gigahertz because that's the smallest CPU speed that you can get. Server RAM within 400 meg. Now what that is that's made up of 2 elements. 200 meg for Bondix server operations, and then 200 meg for the environment that the tunnel resides in. So within Bondix you can set up any number of environments. It's a way of separating out your tunnels. So an environment could be for a specific client, for example, or you could be setting them up for, just to manage the number of tunnels. So if you did 100 tunnels, for example, you might set up 4 environments. Well, each one of those environments requires 200 meg on its own. So as far as the server RAM is concerned, you are looking at 200 meg for Bondix server operations and 200 meg for the environment. Now, please bear in mind that you still need memory available for the server itself to run its operating system and its background tasks that it needs to run. We're not taking that into account here. You need to, because that's going to be based on the operating system that you're using, the additional features or tasks that you have got installed running on this server. So for example, if you've got something like Webmin or Cockpit to manage your server, that takes a certain amount of resource as well. So you'll need to factor that in when you're sizing your server. All we're covering here is just the server specs required for Bondix to run. So bonding RAM, as you can see, each tunnel requires 50 meg of RAM. So as we scale up, so we go from 1 to 100, you can see that 100 tunnels will require a server with at least 5 gig of RAM for Bondix. Again, bear in mind that you've got the operating system and any other programs that you've got running on that server will also need to have its own RAM, but for Bondix to run 100 tunnels, you'll need 5 gig of RAM. Server RAM then jumps up to 1 gig, and CPU speed is 10 gigahertz. So this would mean that you would need at least a CPU with 6 cores of at least 2 gigahertz of RAM, 2 gigahertz clock speed. So that's one CPU, 6 cores, 2 gigahertz per core. That will then allow you to run 100 tunnels quite comfortably on that server. With our servers that we run for our hosted clients, we look at the number of tunnels that we want to put on that particular server, and then we allow at least a 50% overhead. So we make sure that the servers are never stressed. They're never running at full capacity. They're not going to impact on the tunnel running and the channels within those tunnels. Again, we do exactly the same. We have dedicated server farms for specific types of licenses. So we've got an IoT farm, we've got a standard farm, we've got a enterprise farm, and so on. And each of those servers within those farms are only ever spec'd to 50%. So we look at the maximum number of tunnels that we want to be on that, and then we add another 50% requirement based on here. We've already built in the fact that we've got monitoring software, we've got the operating system itself and various other things. That's already taken into account. But from a Bondix side of things, we overspec it by 50%. It just gives us headroom for if we have any anomalies or spikes in the tunnels, or anything that could potentially cause a wobble on the tunnel. That could be the type of connections channel connections that are coming through the tunnel. It could be something instigated by the router. There is a number of different reasons why you could have a channel wobble and could cause a spike in CPU use or RAM use or whatever. So we add an extra 50% on top of that, and we would advise that you do the same in that respect. Obviously, the more tunnels that you go down, the cost then starts to escalate in terms of running the server, maintaining the server, the spec of the server, and everything else. It's one of the reasons why we offer a hosted service. It takes all of that away from you, and all you do is basically connect your router and away you go. Hassle-free service. But for those that require their own servers, and for those that need to be sure that they're sizing it correctly, this guide is a very, very easy to follow guide, and will make life a lot easier for you. So here's the deal. If you found the content that we make helpful, why not drop a like and a subscribe? If you like the content and you keep coming back, we'll continue to keep making it for you. That's the deal. That's my promise to you. Drop a like, drop a subscribe. It helps promote the videos out to other people who may not know that they're there, and will end up helping them as well. You'll feel better for doing that, and we'll continue to make the content.